So welcome to Faith and Count, class 233. We are headed into the Hasidic holidays of Yud Kislev and Tes Kislev, and then Yud Tes Kislev, and then the biggest Hasidic holiday, Chanukah. Well, they're all big holidays. It's a month of celebration, and maybe it's connected to what's happening in the world too. We'll see if we can try and make the connection between all of this. Here. Let's see. There's sorry. Okay, very good. So I don't have a particular well formed one kind of talk for today. There are a couple different things that I saw in the last week. They all looked very interesting, and maybe hopefully I can translate and synthesize the enthusiasm and what these things are about. So the first one is I learned the Sikha from the Rebbe, which is really based on the story by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was explaining why Chassidus is so important and relevant in today's times. And he has many different stories. Each one represents a different kind of thing. I mean, the famous story is that once he was invited to a group of rabbis in Germany, and he went to the hotel there, and in Germany that was not a big Hasidic area, previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he was sitting in the lobby there, and they were asking him, you spend a lot of time not learning, Nigla, Shulchan Aruch and stuff like that. You learn the Chassidus. What's the big advantage of this Hasidic topics? I mean, we seem to be religious and from and doing what we're supposed to do without it. So the Rebbe gave him an example. He said, can you describe the pillars? There were these beautiful, it was a very fancy lobby in a fancy hotel. The pillars. And they said, yeah, it's a marble pillars, the da 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 da. And he said, okay, that's what it looks like superficially. Now go closer to it. And then they saw there were all these beautiful, intricate designs all in the pillars and so forth. And he says, basically, that's what Hasidus does. It sheds a light on which it doesn't bring anything new, but it sets a light on what already exists. And you see that the tremendous intricacy and beauty and light and preciousness of the ideas. That's only the Instacart. So in this one, he said, I'm going to explain it this way. There are two examples, two mashalim. It's like how you search for pearls or how you search for coals in the earth. So pearls, you have to go down to in the water and so forth. But he gives a big, long example about how miners have to go look for coals in the ground. And they have to be somebody who shows them where to dig, and they have to take their own source of air. They can't rely on their own air. They have to make sure they have air when they go down there, and they have to follow the directions and go down and find the particular places where it is and to bring it up from the ground. And it's basically the same thing with pearl divers, but he doesn't give much example of that. But basically, we understand that pearl divers, they have to have a hose and air supply and to find the pearls. And then I've asked the question, why did you have to give both examples? I mean, actually, the second one sounds a little more simple. And then what does it have to do with Chassidus? How are we explaining the preciousness of a Chassidus? So the Rebbe says there's two separate things here. Water and land. And land creatures are formed from earth, from the physical of the earth. But the nature of creatures, animals and human beings, is that we don't necessarily see that we have to constantly be connected to our source. Water creatures, they know. If you go out of your water where you come from, you're dead. You always have to be connected to the source of where everything is coming from. And they understand that. While as land creatures, we can get disconnected and we can think that we're independent beings and we're not really dependent on where we came from. What does that mean spiritually and Chassidus wise? It means as follows: that Chassidus comes to teach you and gives you light. What's a coal? A light and warmth in this cold world. When we lose connection with our source and we don't realize everything is connected to God, all of our happiness, all of our existence, all of our blessings, all of our pleasures of life and so forth, in the truest form, they're all are coming basically from godliness. And when we lose track of that, then we get anxious and worried and all the other kinds of things that happen. So we need to reconnect to that source. So we can reconnect to it two ways. Either you can go down into the mines and dig coals, and coals are necessary for warmth and light. And in this generation now, before Mashiach, it's a lot of lies and a lot of coldness and a lot of stupidity and false news and so forth. And we definitely need that kind of stuff because that's the age that we're in. But ultimately, Chassidus is about Mashiach, and Mashiach is not about just surviving through the Galus time. It's actually like pearls, adornments, which are not necessarily necessary for basic living, but they're necessary for being beautiful and adorned and so forth. The distinction is people ask this question: what do I need Chassidus for? My grandfathers, my great-grandfathers, they seem to be perfectly religious without Chassidus, and they didn't need to learn this stuff. And therefore, what are you doing? And the Rebbe is saying, well, that's sort of like asking, in previous generations, it was warmer out there. It's like it was in Tammuz time, summertime. You didn't need warmth. But now it's winter time out there. There's so much stupidity and cold out there that you definitely need the warmth. But ultimately, we're going to be married to Hashem, and he's going to have a wedding. And in a wedding, you just don't get by with just being warm. You want to be dressed like a kala with the most beautiful pearls and other kinds of adornments. So Chassidus is basically also coming to there ultimately to give us those adornments. When we learn Chassidus, that's what we're doing. That was the thrust of the Sikha. I thought it was a nice little mashal. And then I was going to segue into a little bit to explain the darkness of the period that we're in and how we can actually illuminate it. So, yep. So this is another talk I heard from a rabbi this week. And he said, this was Rabbi Aubrey Hirsch. He's from England.
Is this all Chassidus? I'm sorry, Yeshkosim. Is this all Chassidus that these lectures are all Hasidic lectures?
Basically, all they are. But this one is not necessarily, but I like the idea. And I thought maybe I like it because it's a deeper way of looking at what's going on in the current day. Just like when you look at the pillars, you actually see something that you never really saw before. Yeah. He was explaining the fact, that we're facing a lot of anti-Semitism. And there's really two forms of anti-Semitism out there. There are the ones who want to kill us and wipe us out and hate us. And that's Hamas and Hezbollah and the other kinds of ones out there. And, the Arabs and the universities and so forth. And they would be glad to do it. But there's another kind of a battle that we're all involved in and we're all fighting. We need to have the weapons and the tools to be able to deal with it. And that comes from the Parsha, Lovin. It's interesting that in Passover, in the Haggadah, we say the following line at the beginning of the Haggadah: Lavan bikesh lahakor et hakol. Lavan wanted to uproot everything. And the rabbis explained that he was worse than Paro. That his attempt was to wipe out the Jews in a way that was even worse than what Paro did to us. Oh, good. It's not, ignore him, yes, question. I thought it was a floater going around my eyes. It was actually it was a real fly, not a floater. Okay, come. Okay, so so it seems hard because Paro wanted to drown everybody, and so how does Lovin such a bad person? And the answer is Lovin. There are people out there who want to destroy the Jewish people, not by killing them and not by wiping us out, but by basically destroying our identity and who we are and so forth. And that's what Lovin basically did. Where do you see this? In two stories with Lovin. First one was when Yaakov worked for Lovin for 7 years. And after 7 years, he was supposed to get Rachel. And after those 7 hard years, he finally went to the wedding night and he found out he'd been tricked and he'd been given Leah. And he complained to Lovin, and Lovin And this is Lovin, he's basically the heart of arrogance and the heart of chutzpah, and completely, Lovin means white. He considers himself super holy. And he says to Yaakov, he says, it makes him feel guilty. He says, oh no, that's not kosher. That's not the way we do things here. You have to give the older one before the younger one. Now that's when you know you're really dealing with a shyster. A shyster is somebody, when you find that he's cheating you, he makes you try. He tries to make you feel like you're guilty.
Right.
Now, we see this happening right now in the news. Exactly. We had the ICC, and they're accusing the Jews, and all these countries are accusing the Jews of genocide, and we're doing genocide, and of course it's a terrible crime. And somehow we're supposed to be, rather than the victims of genocide, we're the ones perpetrating genocide, which has no basis in reality. It's completely false. It's just complete manufactured, imaginary kind of reality. But why is it? And we're going to get into why is that. But that's what Lovin did. He did it, and then the second time too, when after 20 years, Yaakov is going home, and he's on his way. He's taking his two wives and all his children. There's 4 wives and all his children. And Lovin chases after him and says, "Why did you, why did you steal my idols?" And Yaakov says, "I didn't do anything. I didn't steal anything. In fact, I was up for 20 years. Every sheep I took care of day and night. If it died, I paid for it out of my own funds and so forth. You never had a more reliable worker." And then Yaakov says, "All I want to do is go home with my children and take them back to my land." And Lavan says, "The children are mine. The grandchildren are mine. It's all mine. What are you talking about? Yours. It's not your family. It's my family." This is also what they're doing basically they're saying, you know what, the Jew doesn't have, there's no such thing as a Jew. You're just human beings, civilians. And this is what the Soviets did after World War II. They made all these statues and memorial sites all over Ukraine and Poland and all these other places. And they put up plaques, but they were not for the Jews that got killed there. Well, they were. But they just said civilians were killed by the fascist empire. That's what they did. They denied that there was any such existence as the Jew. The Jew doesn't exist. They're just civilians. And Napoleon did the same thing. He said when he liberated the Jews, but he said everything for the Jew as a person. Yeah, Napoleon.
What Jews?
He said that when he emancipated the Jews, he said everything for the Jew as a citizen of my country and nothing for the Jew as a nation. He didn't want to have a Jewish, you're just a citizen of my nation. You don't really exist. This is the chutzpah of the current thing. It's like wokeism. It doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter if it's false. It doesn't matter at all. The press, I can lie through my teeth. I can make all these false things. And it's basically coming from the fact that, it's just manufactured. What do you mean genocide? Who's killing these people? The people who are stealing the food are killing them, not the Jews. And besides, you can't bring any evidence that anybody starved. You have no evidence. In fact, you didn't even let anybody bring in any evidence. They only use newspaper accounts, which are coming from Hamas, and then they consider themselves a court. And, it's like, it's such a joke. But we see this over and over again in the news, over and over again, just completely manufacturing a fake world. And you know what it is? It's the second type of anti-Semitism. It's not an anti-Semitism that wants to kill Jews. It's one that wants to obliterate us by just saying there's no such thing as a Jew. There is no such thing as a Jewish people. There is no such thing as truth. There is no such thing as we can make it up any way we want. And that's what the universities also believe, is you can manufacture any kind of fiction that you want about what is true and what is false. And as long as it's interesting and as long as it's artistic and as long as it gets published, it's just great. Rabbi who was illustrating this, they asked him, "Can you give me an example from art?" And he said, "Actually, yeah, there was a case the last week. I don't know if you ever heard this news report. It was about a week ago. There was a guy who sold a banana taped to a card with a piece of duct tape. and he sold it for $5 million. And all the artists were going like crazy, about this. Wow, what a great idea, $5 million for a banana on a card with by duct tape. And he sold it to some Hong Kong multi-built millionaire. And the guy ate it, I mean, it was like, so art, as Andy Warhol said, is whatever you can get away with, that's art, And that's sort of what the age that we're living in. It's just, it's a little crazy. So what's the Jew supposed to do in this? Keep going forward, speak the truth. The world needs to hear truth. It's just, it doesn't care about definitions about sex and what is the sex and what is a male and what is a female and what is truth and what is Israel and who is the attackers and who is civilians and it doesn't care anymore. It wants to just, and this is the age that we're living in. It's a very interesting time. And it's a one way to also of trying to remove God from the world, because when there's no absolute truth, there's no absolute around in the world, then yeah, you can all sorts of interesting things that you can manufacture. And that also is connected with Hanukkah. That's what the Greeks said. The Greeks said, as long as it's interesting and as long as it's exciting and as long as it's artistic, then that's great. It's human. We can create it. There doesn't have to be any truth. And when they came across the Jews were saying, no, there's reality. And reality is rooted in God. And if God says that day is the Shabbos, and God says that you're supposed to do a bris, and God says you're supposed to say and give testimony that it's Rosh Chodesh, then it really is, that's Rosh Chodesh. That's really the new moon. And they said they hated that because they wanted to make up whatever kind of story is interesting and exciting for themselves. If they had realized that, what, that's wonderful. We don't have any problems, novels and fantasy all have its place in it, but don't try and confuse that with the real world. It's great for entertainment, but it's not reality. News is not supposed to be entertainment. They turned into that. The press didn't have to turn into entertainment. The politics didn't have to turn into entertainment. So it's not entertainment. It's entertaining, but it's not real. Jews are God's messengers and to bring reality into this world. And that's part of our mission here in times before Mashiach. And it's part of our who we are. And that's and we just have to make sure that, it's actually more satisfying than the fantasy and the fiction and the imagination of stuff. So there are a lot of people out there, Jews included. Not all Jews are some Jews are more, some less. The world senses that the Jew is some sort of a messenger of the ultimate truth, and what is morality and what is not morality. We have to just be calm, explain what it is, and that will change the nature of the world. And with that, I think I will switch over to my wife.
Thank you.
There's a lot of water on the front porch.
Oh, good. I hope it's not just poured out there.
Let me do this. Okay. Hello. Sorry, I was going to call you on your secular birthday, but you weren't here last week. So hello. I'll catch you on the Jewish birthday, God willing. So anyway, did you want to say something? You're muted. You're still muted.
Is it your birthday today?
Sorry, I don't know why I wasn't here Monday night. I didn't come last week.
You didn't come last week. I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. You weren't here.
You know what? Probably I was so busy at work that I couldn't pick out.
Yeah. Okay.
It must have been that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because I came to work and
it was her secular birthday. Her Jewish birthday is in
one of those days. I don't remember which day.
Yeah. Her Jewish birthday is
I'm getting old. No. My English birthday. I know the number. I don't remember.
No, I said your Jewish birthday is the third day of Hanukkah. The third day of Hanukkah.
It's the Shabbos of Hanukkah.
It's going to be Shabbos this year?
Yeah. I saw on the calendar.
So Thursday is day 1, Friday is
Chaf Zion,
and Shabbos is day 3. Yeah.
Is today your secular birthday?
No,
No, it was someday last week. I don't remember, Monday.
Yeah.
That's so weird. Why,
No, I'm
how
talking
did I,
about
why didn't I
Shalom's
come?
birthday.
yeah. I don't know why we
I'm
missed
not
it.
officially really 60 yet because maybe according to it's called Gregorian, whatever they want, whatever. I'm not until it's
Gregorian, yes. Yeah.
Gregorian, yeah, until it's the Jewish day. Then and it's interesting. My brother asked me.
Oh, you muted yourself.
He just texted me for my birthday. He didn't call,
Oh,
but he asked me. I spoke to him about something else, and he said, "When's your Hebrew birthday?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's asking." Like maybe like all the things going on in the world about Jews
yeah,
has woken
yeah,
mind up because
yes.
he's married to a non-Jew and his children
Right.
are non-Jew. So
Okay, you know what?
we're
Before we go into private stuff, let's do that
sorry.
another
No, I
time.
just was gonna
That's
say,
okay.
like,
That's okay. Okay, good.
yeah,
Let's
doesn't remember.
okay, good.
Sorry.
That's good. I'm happy to talk about it.
I'll
Anyway,
mute.
there's a so we're starting our session. It's session 232, and it's called um um Don't Mess with Me. I'm Made by God. And we're going to talk about it. So anyway, before we talk about that, I want to go briefly into the four things that I always say. Number one, we're in an extraordinary time. We can see it. We're living through it. We're in an extraordinary time. Just all the stuff that Haskell Shimon said. It's the time. It's an outrageous time, but it's also something. Uh, it's all a distraction from what's really going on underneath, which is that the Geula is unfolding. The redemption of the Jewish people and the world is unfolding, and and uh, and our souls. The second thing is our souls were meant to be in this time. We were handpicked to be in this time because we have a crucial role, each one of us, to play. Number three, we were given all the tools we need to navigate this time. We were given the Torah, our incredible guidebook, and the mitzvahs, which are our incredible power tools. And last, what we're doing tonight, learning about the redemption, actively speeds it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe told us that there's no way to speed up the redemption faster than by learning about it. So, so anyway, I'm going to say first a few words about something from a talk in the past couple of weeks by Rabbi Yossi Paltiel, who's one of my favorite Torah teachers, a Hasidic teacher in Crown Heights, and he was talking about the death of, there was a crazy. There was another Lubavitcher emissary, a shaliach, was murdered by Arabs, and we know that in 2008, in December 2008, right around Rosh Chodesh, Kislev, it was an incredibly horrible thing. The two young shluchim, a rabbi and his wife, who had built a Chabad house in Mumbai, and it's not easy to have a Chabad house in such a place. And they had tremendous self-sacrifice. They bought it was like almost like an old hotel building, and they had tons of guests, and they had guest rooms for the guests to stay over in addition to feeding them for Shabbos, and their own quarters on one of the upper floors. They had, like many shluchim, they had plastic furniture. That's how many shluchim live, because they pour everything into their work. They pour their time, their monetary resources, everything they have, their heart and their soul. And these people were snuffed out. And the pictures of them, they're like angels. They're just incredible people. And it's amazing. So anyway,
I was reading about them just recently, and the little boy, their
Yeah.
little son,
yes,
who's I think he's already been bar mitzvahed,
yes.
and he went back there. Prime Minister Netanyahu took him back there to go back to that place.
To Mumbai? Or to
Yeah,
the
to
place where his
Mumbai.
parents are buried. He went to the place that his parents were buried recently. That wasn't Mumbai.
Well, I think they
But-
went to the Chabad house as well. I'm not sure. But,
very possible.
Prime,
Very possible.
Prime Minister Netanyahu went with him, which I thought was
Interesting.
amazing.
Interesting. Just
You can read about it.
yeah, it's just, I said this in another forum. I don't think I said it here. That couple, they went through so much. It was unbelievable. they had, I just read that, maybe I said it last week too. 4 days after they were murdered, another child of theirs passed away because they had one child who died of Tay-Sachs. They had a second child who never got a chance to live at home because he was so frail from birth, probably also Tay-Sachs. And he was in an institution, and 4 days, and he wasn't a he was a kid already. And 4 days after his parents died, he died. Is that right? Crazy? In the institution. And this little boy who survived, so he's the only survivor. His parents were killed, and his two siblings weren't alive. And the woman was 5 months pregnant when she was murdered.
Terrible, terrible.
It's just amazing. So
Who's interrupting me? I'm sorry, but who is he? Does he have grandparents to live with at least, or an aunt
he
or an
does have
uncle?
grandparents. He does have grandparents.
Maybe he's living with an aunt or uncle that's like
Yeah, he
younger
does
and
have
has
grandparents. He
like
absolutely has
cousins he
grandparents.
can live with.
Yes, he absolutely has
Oh
that.
my gosh, I have to.
Yeah. So Hashem chose these extraordinary people for this extraordinary thing in life. And just a couple of weeks ago, the same thing happened. For some reason, Arab terrorists chose to kidnap and murder a 28-year-old Chabad rabbi in the United Arab Emirates, and his body was found 4 days later. And it's a shocking thing, the murder of somebody who only does good. It's shocking from why Hashem allows it, and shocking from the just the plain perspective. So anyway, Rabbi Paltiel was saying he was talking to probably a group. He teaches in high schools and other places. I think this sounded like he was teaching to a bunch of high school girls. And he said he wants to explain something to them. And a tragedy is very hard for all of us to fathom. It's just incredibly hard to fathom. He said, as for you, people your age, I want you to know that, first of all, you should appreciate that you have so much going for you. You have the best body you'll ever have in your life, the strongest, the most agile body you'll ever have. You have the most intellectual capacity you'll ever have in your life. You're emotional, you're flexible, you can go this way, that way. You're not set in stone like an older person. He said, but there's one thing you don't have. And what you don't have as a young person is that you cannot handle tragedy. You don't have, only life equips a person to handle tragedy. That's the only thing. And he commented, it's interesting, I never knew this.
I'm sorry, what was it that he didn't have, that they don't have?
They don't have the capacity to handle tragedy. They block it out. They don't deal with it because they have
no children.
Yeah, they have no, and when it happens to a child, they, believe me, I saw this in my own life. When a kid has to mourn, they don't do it. They skip past it and they play and they do whatever else they do, but they can't embody it. They can't cry. They can't do all those things. So he said, the only thing that teaches you how to handle tragedy, a tragedy like the murder of a 28-year-old Chabad rabbi, the only thing that enables you to deal with it is life, the experience of year after year after year, and seeing life. So he gave an example. He gave an example from his own life. I loved it. I thought it was quite remarkable. When he was 22 years old, his uncle, Rabbi Paltiel's uncle, dropped dead. He was 38 years old. He just dropped dead. And Rabbi Paltiel's father, who was this guy's brother-in-law, found out, and he had the job of going to his father, who was at a wedding, and telling him the news. He had to go, Rabbi Paltiel's father had to go to the grandfather and say, I had to tell him, I'm sorry, your son-in-law dropped dead, and that means your daughter has 3 infants, real babies, who are going to be orphans for the rest of their life. And so so Rabbi Paltiel's father took Rabbi Paltiel with him. And is everything okay? Okay, he took he took Rabbi Paltiel with him, and they went to the wedding. And when they arrived at the wedding, they went into the wedding hall, and Rabbi Paltiel's son, Rabbi Paltiel's father, motioned to the grandfather. The grandfather understood right away, these guys are not coming because they want to ask me how delicious the chicken was. These guys are coming to this wedding for some important reason. So he went out with them. They went into a private room. They closed themselves in the private room. And when they closed themselves in the private room, Rabbi Paltiel's father said to his father one word. He said, Dove. And the grandfather said, well, like this. And Rabbi Paltiel's father said, and like the grandfather knew immediately something. He went like this, finished, and the father said, he didn't even answer, no words. And the first words out of the grandfather's mouth were, Ich hab nicht keine kashas. I have no questions on God. I have no questions on God. So it's a stunning first reaction. It's an incredible first reaction. And as Rabbi Paul, in other words, I know that God knows what he's doing. I have no idea what God's doing. How could he leave my daughter? The emotions will say, how can you leave? How could he rob your daughter of her husband when she has 3 babies to raise and they'll never know their father? How could this be? But instead of that being the first reaction is, I have no questions about God. I have no questions. And it is God's world. And when I'm God, if I were to be God, I would understand, but I don't understand, and I don't expect to understand, but I know who this Hashem is, and I have no questions on him. So he knows what he's doing. Or as somebody else once said, when you'll be God, you'll understand. So Rabbi Paltiel asks, how does his grandfather know to react that way how did he know to react in such a great way? And as Rabbi Paltiel answered, because he learned it from his father, and his father, or his parents, and his parents learned it from their parents, and their parents learned it from their parents. I think I said once before that, there's so many things that we have lost. We know the Torah and we know the mitzvos, but so much of Jewish wisdom that was just passed parent to child has been lost. So I know I've quoted it before, but a young neighbor of mine, well, she was, when she said it, she was young. She was giving a class on parenting, and she said that when you have 4 kids, 5 kids, and you're taking them all to the doctor, and you're rushing out of the door, and you're already 20 minutes late, and they all have their coats on, and you're getting out of the door, and your little one spills milk all over the floor, your first reaction is you look at the child and you say, you should be gebenched. You should be blessed. Because, like a normal parent, normal American parent would say, what did you do to me? You're terrible. No, you should remember this is your precious child. He did it accidentally, and you should give him a blessing. You should be gebenched. So it's like such wisdom. And, I wish somebody would write a book, a collection of Yiddish expressions, Jewish expressions that helped people survive through the generations. So anyway, I want to say that, so I'm just going to give you a segue to a little bit of my life. I told you last week a little bit, but, I've had a really challenging, past 6 weeks, ever since the end of the holidays. I got a chemical burn of my throat. I bought these nose drops that were colloidal silver, and it didn't say to spray it in the air a couple times before you use it. So I just sprayed it straight up my nose, and it probably had a lot of the chemical collected in the end of it, and it burned my nose, and my throat was on fire. And it's been a heck of a time getting my voice back. So, and not
What
only
kind
that,
of a spray was it?
colloidal silver nasal spray, like a decongestant. So don't try it. So I threw it straight in the garbage. So so anyway, it was a challenging time. And then and I'm just coming out of it. And then on Thursday, um, bless his soul, one of a kindergartner, who was tantruming, uh, bolted from where he was sitting, and he had to get through a narrow place, and he ran so fast. He ran so fast. He In running away, he ran right past me and kicked me incredibly hard, not on purpose, on my left foot, incredibly hard. So anyway, I thought I was okay, but that evening my shoe kept getting tighter and tighter and tighter. I was thinking, what's wrong with me? I kept loosening it, and all of a sudden it started hurting like mad. And by the end of the night, we had a walker in my house left over from when my mother-in-law used to be here, and I needed the walker to get around. It was so painful to put weight on my foot. I went to urgent care. So that night I started thinking, oh my gosh, you're just getting over it. You're just barely getting over the voice thing. And now you're down to be in a cast. What's going on? You broke your foot probably. It's so swollen. You can't even put weight on it. And I looked it up in the internet, and indeed, if you break a bone, you can. People think that because they can weight bear right after the accident, that means the bone wasn't broken. It's not true. So anyway, my mind is racing. I am not a candidate for a cast. Dear God, let me never need a cast on one of my legs. I'm such not a candidate for it. I have enough things going on, and my mind was starting to float away into the negative possibilities. And then I said, no, forget it. And I started laughing my head off, just because I know the Rebbe said laughter helps. So I laughed my head off, and I thought, I'm going to see good. And I went to bed. My foot was pretty swollen. My foot was very swollen, and I couldn't bear weight. I really needed that walker. And in the morning, I got up, and it was significantly better. Significantly better. I went to urgent care. I didn't have a broken bone. I had a they called it a midfoot sprain with swelling and redness and stuff like that. And anyway, so I didn't go to school that Friday because I had to go to urgent care. But today I went to school, and they gave me an air cast and all this kind of stuff. So I went to school today. I arrive in the building, and because of my throat, because of my voice, I now carry this giant cup, insulated cup. It says Marshall on Chassidus on it, and one of my students gave it to me, and it was almost filled to capacity. So the water in here weighed about 2 pounds, and this thing itself, I don't know, it could be 2 pounds itself. It's pretty heavy. Even if it's only 1 pound, that's 3 pounds. And I wasn't even thinking. When I went to take off my coat, I put this down on a soft chair. What do you think happened? I fell straight off the chair, straight onto my sprain. I wasn't wearing the boot. I was wearing a soft sneaker, straight onto my sprain. I thought, so the Yetzer, your inner challenging instinct, whispered in my ear, does God hate you? Does God hate you? He hit you again in the same spot? And then my true inner voice said, this is not going to hurt me one bit. I'm made by God. I'm made by God. I am not fragile. This thing is not going to do a thing to me because I'm made by God. And it penetrated my very core when I said those words. And I was confident there's nothing that's going to happen to me from that. And there wasn't anything that happened to me from that. But so anyway, that's what we have to remember when we have to use all those pieces of advice. Rabbi Paltiel's piece of advice is don't go against Hashem. Just don't do it. Don't go against Hashem. It's like cutting off your own soul. it's the Yetzer that gives you these thoughts, because the Yetzer's whole goal in life, his whole job is to distance you from God. And the whole reason you're here, one of the reasons you're here is to not listen and to stick to Hashem. This is what I say in kindergarten, stick to Hashem. It's a big job. It's kindergarten and first grade. And so one of the things we do is like Rabbi Paltiel's father or his grandfather. I have no questions on God. We do not separate from Hashem. We just don't do it. And another great thing is just to laugh, because laughing brings blessing. Laughing means I am confident in life. I am confident in Hashem. I am not traveling down the path of worry and fear. And another good thing if you're going to stick to Hashem and you're going to say there's nothing wrong and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't mean you can't empathize with yourself. You can say, "Ow, that hurt! Oh, that really hurt! Didn't it hurt me? It hurt me." But it helps to empathize. But anyway, the thing is, stick to Hashem, laugh, and don't separate from Hashem. And remember that you're made by Hashem. You're tough stuff, and nothing is too big. Nothing is too scary. There's no obstacle in your way. There's only you and Hashem. So anyway, I'm going to wish everybody a good night, because I'm getting off the internet early tonight. And so I'm going to turn off the recording. And if anybody has any questions,